Hello and welcome everyone back for another Backlog review. Today's episode is on the Japanese survival horror game inspired by the likes of Resident Evil and Silent Hill, in The Evil Within. One of those games during that period of time where Japanese studios were doing their absolute best to cater to Western audiences while also adding their own unique flair to it all. And you can definitely feel the time period in which this game was made. 12 years later, people still talk about this game very highly, so now that I've taken the time to play it, how do I feel about it? We'll be discussing that and more, but before we get into it, just remember, if you like today's episode, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any future backlog reviews, and make sure to stick around to the end of the video for a sneak peek on my next review. But with all that out of the way, let's begin. Starting off with the story, we are Detective Sebastian Castellanos. We are sent to a psych ward after a call comes in about a mass murder scene in progress with units already on scene. But from the moment we get there, we can already tell things are not as they seem. After a brief encounter with Ruvik, the game's antagonist, we are transported into a twisted world filled with horrors, all doing their best to try and kill us. Who is us? Well, you didn't come to the ward alone. You have two sidekicks who really aren't all that important aside from the fact that one is infected with whatever is possessing the creatures in this world, and one who is actively working against you in the shadows, for reasons you're not quite sure of. All the while you're doing your best to find and keep Leslie safe, one of the few surviving patients, and while you don't know why, you quickly learn that Ruvik is after him. That's about as much story as I can explain. You see, the game's primary method of explaining things is to you via these notes and reports, diary entries, etc. that you find throughout the levels. Now, while finding them isn't hard, if I have to stop and read stuff rather than the game just explaining things to me, I don't like that. This isn't LA Noir where the point of it is to look around for details and clues. If you just want to watch the cutscenes and play the game normally, like I try to do, you will basically understand nothing. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand he's a detective and all that, and that's kind of like, oh, well, this is kind of like LA Noir. Yeah, but with so much psychedelic stuff going on and all the blah blah blah, blah nonsense, I would have preferred just a more straightforward experience. The few bits of information they do feed you gives a general idea as to what happened, but you still have to do miles of work to actually understand it all. And for me, I'm just not a fan of that. Moving on over to gameplay now, I finally picked this game up because I was itching to play some survival horror, but I didn't want to go back and replace something I'd already beat. So I finally took a dive in here, and I came out the other side happy with the gameplay as it gave me exactly what I wanted. There aren't any real crafting mechanics besides the ability to make bolts for your bolt gun, but to be honest, I only ever use the explosive ones as they prove far better than the rest, with freeze walls being useful on the occasion. Besides that, all ammo and health items are things you find out in the open world. This is one of the few games where ammo is truly limited and missing shots really does hurt. At the start of the game, you can carry less than 10 extra bullets for your revolver and even fewer for the shotgun and rifle you find. You also have a magnum later on, but I literally never used it as I just kind of always forgot that I had it. You do get normal grenades, but they have to be a little awkward to use as Sebastian takes all day and a night to throw them. But it's like I said, the game does have a real sense of urgency when it comes to making every shot count, as coming across ammo is uncommon if not sometimes just outright rare, especially for your more powerful guns. I really enjoyed the added tension though of only having like 3 bullets and 2 shotgun shells left after certain fights. While the game does have sneak and distract mechanics, I think the devs either forgot they put them in the early portions of the game, or they didn't know how to properly implement them later, as after the first 2 chapters, you basically never have any real ability to use them moving forward, as enemies are constantly aware where you are, not to mention the fact that there are more enemies that are actually immune to sneak attacks than those you can actually use it on. Speaking of enemies, there's a decent amount of variety here. You have your regular village zombies, fat ones, armed ones with grenades, axes, guns, crossbows, etc. The game also throws a number of side and main bosses at you, ranging from chainsaw guys, golem giants, 12-legged spider women, and more. You start facing a different boss at the end of every other chapter, starting around chapter 4 or 5, which all vary widely in how much fun or annoying they are to deal with. It's very clear how heavily inspired the game is by RE4. That isn't a bad thing though by any means. When it comes to upgrading yourself or your weapons, they all pull from the same green sludge you're asked to find. It can be found in cabinets, just lying around, dropped by enemies. Every now and then you'll hear an old timey song playing, and that's your cue to go looking for a mirror that will shatter and teleport you back to a mental hospital where you can strap yourself into a chair from Dead Space 2 and use the green goo to upgrade everything you have from stamina, health, weapon damage, ammo capacity, and more. Now, personally, I wasn't the biggest fan of this system as upgrades felt trivial at first, and while yes, I was stronger by the end of the game, it took a lot longer to get there than I feel like it should have. Also, I hate how games like these also absolutely nerf characters. Sebastian is a detective who's been on the force for years, but yet he takes forever to reload, gets tired from sprinting after 5 seconds, and can barely hold a gun straight. Easily the worst trope any game does ever. Also, in this mental hospital, you can use keys that you find from breaking specific statues to open these lockers that contain anything from medical supplies, ammo, or green goo. And if you're already maxed out on that specific supply from the locker, you can always just come back later and get it. Lastly now, touch on performance real quick. The game ran great on Steam Deck. It kept a steady 60 frames per second. I didn't deal with any bugs or glitches, no stuttering or freeze framing, no audio issues or texture loading errors. The game just ran. Does it look a little dated? Yeah, in some spots. The limited color palette didn't really help, but that sort of just feeds into the vibe they were trying to create. I do have to note two major issues I had. Number one was the game forcing a 4:3 aspect ratio on Steam Deck. I took a picture of what it looks like to show you guys here more clearly, and while I got used to it, why is a quarter of my screen just straight up not being used? Even when I try to force the Steam Deck to stretch out the image or fill the screen entirely, it didn't change anything. The second issue I had was when I tried to play the game on the Xbox Rogue Ally X to see if the game looked any better on there by chance, it just straight up wouldn't launch. The screen just flickers and gets stuck. I assume this is a Windows issue, but I don't know. I didn't really care to look into it as I didn't really intend to play the game on it, but I just wanted to make note of that. Okay, so in the end, how did I feel about the Evil Within? 12 years late to the party, I was left thinking, wow, that was it? Let me explain. Do I think the game was good? Yes, absolutely. Don't get it twisted. I had fun, and I enjoyed 90% of my time with the game. The only reason I waited so long to play it was because I knew the first hour or so dragged on from my prior attempts to start it. I like the no-nonsense gameplay that made the game feel tense the entire way through. The game throws you a couple of one-off sections, like being in the hospital with the invisible enemies, which was honestly annoying, but nothing really stays long enough to wear you out. The save points were solid, and the mini/big boss fights were spaced out well and varied enough to enjoy each time. Even if the spider lady shows up 3 times, which honestly was kind of annoying, it was whatever. You may have noticed I was not a fan of how the game goes about explaining its story. While I don't mind games doing this at times like RPGs, detective games, and likewise, in this game I found it to be more of an annoyance as it really only served to slow things down in the worst way possible. The game's upgrade system was a personal low light for me, as everything was upgraded super slowly, and some of the higher level upgrades required a ridiculous amount of goo to actually unlock. There was a game mechanic where you could burn enemy bodies by using matches, and outside of sometimes being able to kill enemies that way, it felt useless as enemies wouldn't really drop any extra loot, and if you killed them with a headshot, there was no risk of them getting back up. The two companions you have also felt overpowered, strangely enough. I'm not saying that as a bad thing, but sometimes I felt like maybe I should just let them kill the enemies for me, as they were pretty good at doing so, even if they were kind of slow about it. Graphically, the game is fine. I'm not going to complain about its low color palette and cutscenes hold up well, even if the dialogue maybe doesn't. But again, I hated the force aspect ratio. Overall, the game did scratch that itch I was looking for, but the way people talk about this game, it doesn't make sense to me. Like I said, it's a solid game that kept me entertained throughout, but when people bring this up as one of the best cross-gen games, I don't see what they're talking about at all. I would give the game a strong 8 as I played it at the exact right time for what my taste was, and with the game running as seamless as it did, I felt the genuine desire to keep playing after each completed chapter. I just don't see myself thinking about this game very much in the future, and while I do recommend it to all of you watching, that recommendation stems solely from the gameplay perspective. If you're in the mood for a Dead Space/RE4 kind of experience, well, it's all up in your face, no fluff, with a tad of horror. It will certainly scratch that itch if that's what you're looking for. But beyond that, I don't really see any reason to recommend this game. Definitely not for the story, in my opinion. But hey, that's just how I feel about it. That's going to do it for me today, guys. I hope you all enjoyed this episode of Backlog Reviews. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, let me know in the comment section down below. Also, let me know if you agree or disagree with my ranking and criticisms of the game. If you're looking for any more Steam Deck Center reviews, make sure to like, subscribe, and click the bell so you get notifications for my next video. Hope you all have a good rest of your day, and I will see you all later. Peace.
We are now under high alert. Stay alert and detain any suspicious person on site. Attention all citizens. By order of the Lord Regent and the City Watch, all contaminated buildings are strictly off limits.
Signs of sickness and plague must be reported to the authorities at once. By the laws of the Lord Regent, report all sleepers.